Why art?
Well, I don't think you can actually make any distinction between art and civilization. I mean, what is a civilization without art? I mean,
Very, very Churchill. Like.
well, I mean, you have to have symbols, and of course, that's really what it comes from. Symbols obviously could take the form of buildings, they could take the form of portraits and statues, and I suppose it all slightly perhaps fans out from there, really. So there's a sort of anthropological necessity for art, for things to demonstrate your status, who you are, where you are, and it doesn't take long for those sort of things to become more sophisticated and for great practitioners who are particularly good at it to surface, and well, it's called art history.
Fascinating. Now, why art for you specifically? How did you end up in all of this?
Well, I inherited an interest in art from my mother and father. My mother was in a wheelchair when she was young, and as a result, because she loved going around antique shops, she'd park outside the shop in the days when you could park outside shops. Indeed, in the days when they were antique shops, there aren't many of those anymore. They're all coffee shops, aren't they?
Yeah.
And she'd send me in, and I would go and bring out a vase or whatever, and I'd show it to her. And I think the process of holding these things, meeting the antique dealers, discussing it with my mum, meant that a bit of it sort of stuck to my fingers, as it were.
Yeah.
And I became an art dealer really the next 10 or 15 years, having studied history of art at university and what have you. No, but it got me early.
Yeah.
Antiques, art. My mother, focused me early. And gosh, that helps, doesn't it?
Which do you think is the greatest piece you've found? And the greatest measured perhaps by the importance of the artwork.
Well, you see, gosh, it all changes. It depends what mood I'm in. It depends, and it depends what I'm wearing that day. I mean, I've sold probably 2 or 3 thousand works of art, um, and as a result, one can sometimes become rather sort of punch drunk. But I have to say there are things I recall, and there are things I recall with huge sentiment as well. I mean, like the first picture that I ever really discovered, which was a portrait of a scowling monk with no hair. But because he had no hair, the auction house, which was this little auction house actually just up the road from where we are now, it was in Marylebone, described it as 19th century because hair is crucial in being able to date a portrait. I mean, it sounds like a very obvious thing, but hairstyles give you away quicker, better than anything else. Because he had no hair, a 17th century portrait, a 350-year-old painting, was sold as a 19th century painting. And then I was able to establish the artist, work out that he was a monk that looked after the Queen, the consort of Charles II. Anyway, bought it for 180 quid, sold it for £20,000. My business was born. Art dealing is not just about buying a picture, putting a frame on, and selling it. It's it's about living and breathing the process of finding out about it, becoming intimate with it. Sometimes it can almost feel like, well, members of the family.